They never rest. Nothing's ever done. They're the hard part with the construction work. We'll get more into this. Is that once they build an edifice, they're on to the next one.
Yeah. Or once they build their part of the job. So
Yes.
if the foundation guy and the roof guy and the window guy are all trying to do all their jobs simultaneously, that isn't going to go well.
Oh yeah, by the way, where's the plumber at? Well, wait a minute. We haven't even dug a hole. What do we need the plumber for?
Welcome to MetaGagement, the HR show that dives deep into the heart of employee engagement and workplace culture. Your hosts, Ann Scottlin and Dr. Lyman Montgomery, bring you a groundbreaking show that explores innovative strategies and insights to transform and elevate your organization's HR practices. Dr. Montgomery is an employee engagement expert and best-selling author, while Ann Scottlin is an acclaimed business consultant and podcaster. Together, they will unpack the complexities of modern HR challenges and reveal innovative solutions that can be immediately applied to your workplace. Please welcome Ann Scottlin and Dr. Lyman Montgomery.
Hello, welcome back to MetaGagement-HR, the show made just for you, where we're helping you make the possible probable. I'm Ann Scottlin. This is Dr. Lyman Montgomery, the one and only. How are you, Lyman?
I'm doing absolutely fantastic. Thank you.
Amazing. We are glad you are all here today. Can't wait to bring you some more in our series. Please do like and subscribe and shoot us some questions, comments. We'd love to answer them on the air. And as we're going through the show, if you're having a good time, copy this link and shoot it off to someone who you might think would enjoy hanging out with you and us today. So welcome back to our 5-part series called the 5 Persona Types Architecture. This is super fun. We started the first persona type last week. And just as a reminder, the 5 types are cheerleader, construction worker, chess player, commander, and chemist. And last week, we really focused on cheerleader. And remind us all, Lyman, why is this so vital, understanding these personas and utilizing them in a team experience?
Yes, it's extremely important to understand what causes a team to move as a well-oiled machine. And what we found out through years of study, interviewing thousands of people, we noticed that there were 5 personality types, or what we call personas, that tend to emerge in high-functioning, high-effective, and efficient teams. And those were the personas that you mentioned: the cheerleader, the construction worker, the chess player, the commander, and the chemist. And all of them have strong points, but they're also some areas that you want to be careful about, especially when you have too many of one persona in a group. For example, last week we talked about if you had too many commanders, they will tend to point fingers at each other and very little work get done. Equally, so if you had too many cheerleaders, it just turns into a great party. Everyone's having fun and very little work gets done. And the same could be said with the chemist, a bunch of folks sitting around worrying about the mixture of the relationship and very little work gets done. So you want to have that balance between their personas. And when we talk about persona, this is how you show up in the workplace. Last week we talked about you may have a person, for example, who's a cheerleader and is very bubbly, outgoing in the workplace. And then off the clock, they may go home and be very introspective, very quiet, very stoic. And it's like, wow, this person's totally different at home than they are. And you did a great job explaining that a lot of times it's about them being able to get re-energized and reconnect because they tend to expend a lot of energy.
Yes. Expending a lot of energy, which is super fun for them, makes them, they're right in their groove, but then also they have to restore that energy and get it back. And, when we talk about moving on today, we get to talk about the construction worker, which I think is really fun. I think this is one of the personas where people all know a construction worker. And we'll get to that in just a moment. Like someone's going to pop out into your head just thinking about the construction worker persona. But first of all, just to remind you that our 5 persona architecture assessment is available on our website. If you want to take the quick version, it's free. You just pop over there to MetaGagement.com and go to assessment, and you can just quickly answer a few questions and get your primary persona and how that fits into the team that you're working with. But the construction worker is this person who is all practical. It's about one step in front of the other. It's about workflows. It's about getting results. They're not necessarily the commander, like overseeing the whole thing from a high level view. They're not the cheerleader who is just having fun, inspiring everyone else and is super critical to the team. This is really kind of your workhorse character that actually loves its job.
Yes. This is the worker bee. This is the person, I think last week we talked about at a family reunion. This is the person that's making sure everyone has eaten, making sure there's meat on the grill, that there are cold drinks. They struggle sometimes sitting down because they want to make sure that everyone is having a good time, and their really strong point is relationships. They're really good at building relationships.
That's so interesting because I think, many people will tell me, I thought that just because the cheerleader persona seems more naturally outgoing, spontaneous, people oriented, it surprises them to see that in this particular assessment, the construction worker is all about building, and including relationships are a huge part of that.
Yeah. And the difference, that's a good point. The key difference between the cheerleader persona and the construction when it comes to relationship is that the cheerleader focuses solely on the relationships and how a person feels, whereas the construction worker builds working relationships. In other words, they're like, you know what? I know I can put John in place because John's not lazy. John's going to do his job. I know I can put Sue on the team because Sue her energy matches mine. Don't put Lyman on the team. He talks too much. Nothing's going to get done. He's going to be too busy motivating. We need to get this work done. We got deadlines to meet. And so their relationship is all practical and based on whom do I need on the team to get the project done. Not so much whom do I like, who's going to be the life of the party. For them, outcome is the key point. Did we meet the goal? And whom do I need on my team? Just think about like the difference between a dream team and just a regular team. Everyone wants a dream team where everyone knows their role, knows their place, and can perform at such a high level that they can win a championship. That's the difference between the cheerleader per se, who just want everyone to feel good, and there's a place for that. Whereas the construction worker builds a relationship based on who can help us get to the championship and win.
And what's interesting is the construction worker it's possible that some construction workers would feel the best team I could ever have is to be a whole team of 5 construction workers. Can you even imagine how prolific we could be, how many deadlines we could hit, on and on and on? But as we learned from this assessment, that is not always, if you have too many construction workers, you have too many priorities going in different directions.
There you go. That's exactly correct. There's always a building project. They never rest. Nothing's ever done. The hard part with the construction work, we'll get more into this, is that once they build an edifice, they're on to the next one.
Yeah. Or once they build their part of the job. So
Yes.
if the foundation guy and the roof guy and the window guy are all trying to do all their jobs simultaneously, that isn't going to go well.
Oh yeah, by the way, where's the plumber at? Well, wait a minute. We haven't even dug a hole. What do we need the plumber for?
So we exaggerate, but you can see too many minds going in too many directions, and sometimes can create impatience. And That's where the commander comes in, as we will see in subsequent weeks. Also the chemist, also the chess player, one of my favorites, and the cheerleader to get everything working smoothly. So part of why this is so important to the HR industry, to engagement, to DEI engagement, which is a huge part of what you and I do here, Lyman, in our work for the HR industry, is tapping into the opportunities of understanding these personas. Because when you can understand them, it can bring more ease to your work and your team.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's dive in just a little more deeply to the construction worker. Give us a problem, and let's see how the construction worker might find a solution.
Yeah. For example, let's say you're working on a DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion project. And it's a huge project, involves multiple teams, multiple departments, and you feel as if there's something missing. Maybe you're falling behind. Maybe you call a meeting and everyone doesn't show up. And so every time you're meeting, you're always having to go back to what was covered in the previous meeting and trying to bring everyone up to speed. And so that's the problem. Where the construction worker, the goal of the construction worker say, well, wait a minute. Why do we keep doing rework? Why do we keep repeating ourselves? If people are not going to show up, let's make sure we replace them with someone who has the time, the energy, and the availability to actually show up to meeting. And so the construction worker doesn't have a problem removing you from the team because they're going to do what's in the best interest of getting the project done, regardless of your feelings. And they will say things like this: listen, this isn't personal. You know we have to get this done, and you've missed 3 of the last 4 meetings, so obviously you don't have time. So we've already consulted with another department. They have 2 members, and when time frees up, then you're welcome to come back. But we really need to get this done. Bye.
Yeah. So this is sometimes depending on how large an organization is. If this is a giant organization, where the lower level management, they really are also the construction workers. So when they're a natural born, naturally occurring construction worker, I would say many of those managers do that, and those are the ones that have the confidence to do what you just said, which is change and reform the team as necessary, and not being emotionally attached so much to the outcome. And sometimes HR struggles with that, and sometimes it can help.
And sometimes what they will do, a construction worker will say, okay, let's look at this huge project, and they will take you into a room of a bunch of whiteboards, and they will workflow, and they say, well, let's break this down into steps. Okay, what's step number 1, step number 2, step number 3? Who's responsible? So in their mind, someone has to be responsible for a specific task. And they hold that person or persons accountable for that task. And so they're very good at deconstructing a large project down to very small, manageable components. But they want to make sure that those pieces fit together. And they love doing that. They will sit there and say, well, wait a minute. I was sitting home, and really this project, instead of trying to attack this, let's break it into phases. So what's going to be phase 1, phase 2? Oh, when we get to phase 3, let's pilot this. And so when we're done, we've already tested this part. We can move on to the next. And so they don't mind fire testing. They don't mind making sure that things are going to work before they move to the next situation or the next problem. And so they're very good at deconstructing problems and coming up with solutions, with antidotes, with making sure that there's a strong feasibility that we're going to come in not just on time, but under budget.
Well, and this is sort of one of those examples of where while everyone has their role, what makes the construction worker stand out from more of an engineer type
Mm-hmm.
role, right? Because the engineer, depending on how experienced they are, they will recommend a plan of growth going forward. Whereas the construction worker, you put them in charge, they're going to be much more likely to reverse engineer it to see what they
Yes.
need by working backwards. So, oh, well, we can't build this wall if we haven't ordered these parts, right? We can't
Yes.
ask so and so to take on this project when we haven't let them finish that project. It's like always that kind of reverse engineering, which is a fun process, and some people are very, very good at it.
Yeah, and they will prioritize based on the dependencies. Okay, before we could, they're very sequential. In other words, before we could move to to B, have we made sure A is taken care of? And so they may have an A sub part A, sub part A, sub part A. Okay. And so when you meet with a construction worker, they will have blueprints, they will have workflow, they will have charts, they will have all these different plans. And it's really about saying, okay, um, looking at not just what they're doing, but also look at environmental conditions. Okay, they will
Mm,
look at, for example, is there anything that could impede this project, such as budget?
mhm,
Maybe we don't have the right authorization. So before they
mhm,
begin, it reminds me of an old biblical verse says, no one builds a house without first adding up the cost. And so they will sit down and figure out what does it take, whom does it take to make sure this project not only is successful, but it's also sustainable. And so they may spend the first 3 or 4 months doing nothing but calculations, making sure that we have the resources. And this is probably the biggest downfall of some construction work is that they can get caught up so much in making sure that everything is in place before they do anything. And sometimes you don't have all the information and you have to make a decision. So
mhm.
again, construction workers are very good when it comes to planning, doing the work themselves, but sometimes they get caught up in the weeds of saying, well, wait a minute, we don't have this, we don't have that. They can also be very critical.
Yes.
And sometimes, you know what, good enough is better than the best case.
Yes.
Sometimes you
So
have to
it
go with what you
depends
know.
on time and everything else. Like how
Yeah.
much time do you have? And can it ever really be perfect? What is the difference between good, better, best, and I guess that's the same as
And
optimal.
also,
Um, and and so this is so much fun. We're gonna have to take a break in just a second. But before we do that, just want to remind you, you can check out the persona types on our website. Go to metagagement.com, go to assessment, and you can take your the first step version there, right there for free. And when we come back, we're going to give you a few more examples or stories of who the construction worker is, what they look like in the workplace, how you recognize them, and also how do they interrelate with the other four persona
yes.
types: cheerleader, chess player, commander, and chemist. When we come back, we'll have more for you in just a moment.
Are you feeling overwhelmed in your HR role? Discover MetaGagement, the forward-thinking solution that goes beyond traditional methods. Our personalized coaching services provide tailored support to help you enhance your professional and personal development. With our focused meta mindset system, you'll sustain motivation and achieve your goals. Experience the transformative power of our engaging events and webinars. Connect, learn, and grow with industry leaders and motivated individuals. MetaGage your organization today. Visit metagagement.com and start your journey.
Okay, welcome back. You are watching and or listening to MetaGagement-HR. I'm Ann Scottlin here with the wonderful, the one and only Dr. Lyman Montgomery, sharing with you detailed information about our assessment, the MetaGagement Persona Types Assessment. And we've been having so much fun these weeks going through our 5-part series and talking about the 5 persona types. Last episode was the cheerleader, and this time we're talking about the construction worker. So, how do we recognize this construction worker, Lyman? I mean, we've talked a lot about how they operate and what they do. What are some of the, what is some construction workers you've known in your life, or how do we recognize those when we're in the workplace and we're like, they would be really good at this?
Yes, the construction worker is the one who he or she or they will roll up their sleeves. They're right there in the trenches with you. They're not someone who's going to direct the work. They're not going to. They're the ones that say, you know what, I wouldn't ask anyone to do anything that I myself wouldn't get down.
Mm-hmm.
They're, for example, let's say you have a custodian crew. They're emptying the trash with them. They're digging ditches. They're painting the wall because to them they have to be hands on. They love to demonstrate. They say, "Well, let me show you how you do it. This is how you do it." And
Mm-hmm.
so they love to demonstrate how things are to get done. They don't
Mm,
mind getting their hands dirty. Matter of fact, if you were to tell them to sit in the office, they would be miserable. Okay. They understand there's a place and time where, yes, they're putting together plans, they're putting together strategies. But when it comes to the implementation, they're there with a hard hat on, they're there with the work boots on, they're there to get dirty, and they're there to say, listen, all of us collectively have to get our hands dirty, roll up our sleeves, pull up our boots to get this done. And they
absolutely.
want
And I
you to
think,
look at, yes.
oh, construction workers are often, based on my own personality and talents and experience, some of my best teachers because I can learn from books, I can learn from online work. It
Hmm.
doesn't matter. But my favorite way to learn, and since I was a kid, is to watch hands on, or
Yes.
even better yet, do it hands on. And construction workers are the people who I always just loved. And I think I mentioned last week, my mom definitely fit into the construction worker category. And but I loved learning from her. I was 5 years old. I'm standing on a stool. I can barely reach the kitchen counter, and she's teaching me how to cook and bake things and cut things. And she was just like, "Here, you watch, and then you do." And it was ever since it's been,
Yes.
yes, those are people I really love learning from. So even that can be useful to remember that they can make really good instructors, right, for workshops,
Very good
seminars,
instructor.
because
Yes.
they articulate in detail and they show instead of just tell.
Exactly. Their communication style is tactile. In other words, they have to touch something.
Mm-hmm.
These are people that will often say, I need to get my hands dirty. I need to feel. I need to actually put my feet into it. And so they will use very physical terms. They
Mm-hmm.
also tend to get pleasure from seeing something on paper and seeing something physically they can touch, that they
Mm-hmm.
can feel, as opposed to just an idea. So they're not very much an idealist. They're like, well, how do we take an idea that the chemist may have and turn it into something very practical, something very tangible? The
Mm-hmm.
other great thing about the construction worker is they love to check in. Uh, Not that they're micromanaging, but they really want to know, are you running into any problems? Uh, they might have 2 or 3 meetings that may last a minute or two. We want to have a progress meeting. And where are we at with the budget? Where are we at with the materials? Are there any snacks? Anything we need to know? Because in their mind, they want to make sure that everyone's on the same page and that the deadline is the deadline is the deadline.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, I love that. So helpful. So, in brief, because we kind of want to do some help the construction worker with a little bit of reverse engineering today.
Hmm.
So, how does the construction worker, for example, best approach the commander?
Yes. And so the commander might, for example, say, we need to build this project. And they may have an idea as to what they want. They may not necessarily know how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
the construction worker is all about the how to's. Okay. And so how they work together is, think of the commander as the what and the why we should do it, whereas the construction worker It's more about the how we're going to do it. And so they're great implementers. And that's why you want to have both of them work together. You want to have someone who's an idealist and someone who's an implementer. If all
Mm-hmm.
you have are idealists, you're going to have a whole big list, wish list of what we should do. It'd be great if we did this. Imagine if we could do this. Whereas the construction workers say, well, give me your wish list and let me make it happen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I can see how the construction worker could have a positive/negative relationship with the cheerleader, because
Yes.
sometimes the cheerleader clutters up the workspace for the construction worker. And some of you are really relating to this right now if you've been working in HR. It's like, golly, we just have to get this done already. Who cares how everyone feels? Who cares whether they're motivated? They're just, again, worker bees, get on with it, right?
Right.
But other times they can have to depend on the cheerleader when
Yeah.
the people on their team slow down, get stuck, get overwhelmed, right?
Right. Because they're energized with different things. For example, the construction worker is energized by the project. Oh my
Mm-hmm.
God, imagine when this is done, how we're gonna feel. I mean, we've conquered the mountain. We've won the war. We've planted our flag. All right. Whereas the cheerleader is like, but yeah, can we have fun while we're doing it? You can't just work people, work people, work people, work people. The construction worker, he or she may say, you know what? All hands on deck. I know you're supposed to have an hour lunch. You're getting 15-minute break. We're bringing in sandwiches. Matter of fact, you ain't even got to leave. It's going to be a working lunch because we got to get this thing done. Whereas the cheerleader, on the other hand, in relation to the construction worker, will say, but imagine how much more you can get out of them if people felt relaxed, if people felt good
Re-energized.
about the work and they felt energized rather than burning both ends in the middle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Like, what's the overall wellness impact, emotional wellness, productivity wellness? Like, if
Mhm.
people, scientifically, if people can get enough of a break, and I've just learned that even in my own life, right? Like, because I tend to be, drift into a little workaholic tendencies sometimes.
Yes.
And I'm sure you know nothing about that at all. But anyway, but I sometimes have to remind myself, I have to literally stop. I sometimes have to set timers to make me stop and take a break. And that's the cheerleader part of me saying, I know that scientifically, even, you need to take a break. Let me help you. Let's relax. Let's eat something. Let's go for a 10-minute walk. Let's drink a bunch of water.
Yes. Yes.
Take some breaths. Oh my goodness. Now you come back and things are taking half the time. And it might have taken 2 hours before if you hadn't taken the break, and now it only takes one. So again, it takes a team. It takes all the types.
And it really does take, like you said, it takes a team, takes all different types, understanding each one's strength and each one's weaknesses. Weaknesses is not a bad thing. Okay. Um, there are times where, yes, all hands on desk. We're going, it's a working lunch. We got to come in on this deadline, but it shouldn't be all the time. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the criticism a lot with the construction worker is they don't know how to stop because they go from literally one project to the next. My dad was this way. He would have 100 projects that he's working on, and it's never done
Mm.
because as soon as one gets done, he can't celebrate. It's like, wow, okay, when we get done with this project, we take a vacation. No. We might be able to take a couple of days, but I got to get back to the work site. We're starting a new project. We're starting a new highway. They're building a new building.
Mm-hmm.
We got to lay a foundation. And it's like, so when do you stop? When do you enjoy what you've built?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the struggle sometimes the construction worker is being able to enjoy the work that they've done. Because in their mind, it's a never ending, it's like the Great Wall of China. Okay. Great idea. It's just going to take you about 300 years to build it.
Oh, that's really good, really good example. And if it hadn't extended beyond a lifetime, one guy would have seen the whole thing through, or gal.
Yes.
You're like, I'm just going to keep going. I'm just going to keep going. So we see how important it is, as in any assessment, like this, what we tend to call the strengths and weaknesses, which I just like to call the two sides of any coin, the two sides of any persona, the two sides of any person. How those sides work for and against in a team environment, and how we also strike a balance. Because if we just had a team of one persona, things would go wonky really fast. So how do we, find this balance? And I think we talked briefly last week, and then we're going to have to wrap up already, but on how to view this in practical terms in your own business, in your own company. So if you are designing a new team project and you can pull from these persona types and create a balance, you have a much higher chance of having things go more smoothly, of accomplishing your ultimate goal, often even more quickly, because there's less resistance when you have a well-oiled machine of these 5 persona types.
Yes.
When we already have a team in place and now we're bringing the persona types in to say, well, I've got like 2 chess players, I've got 2 commanders, I've got 1 chemist. Now what do I do? Yeah, I just want to review what you mentioned last week, Lyman, which was, how do we bring these tools to existing teams as well?
Yeah. The first thing is take the assessment yourself, and also look at what do I need? What's missing? Because it's all about a well-rounded, what I call a well-oiled machine that everyone is firing in the area they need to be firing at. No one's worrying about the other person because each one has enough on their own plate to be satisfied. And also, the work is challenging enough that they're not bored, that they don't get stagnated. And so, if you, in a real practical sense, sometimes commanders are very good at making sure people stay on task. They love deadlines. Let me get more into this. We talk about the commander. The cheerleader again is to inspire the construction worker. They're your worker bees. They're gonna make sure that deadlines are met. They will break a project down into its simplest form. Whereas the chess player, they're always thinking about, okay, if we do this, then what's next? And they tend to think 3, 4, 5 moves ahead of everyone. So in their mind, it's always in a future state. Okay. And whereas the chemist is always about the balance between, so if we do this, so for example, a chemist would say something like this to the construction worker. So if we give up our lunch, what do we gain? Because it has to balance. It's all about the equation. So if I give up something, what do I gain? If I gain something, what do I have to give up? And that's how the chemist tends to think. We'll talk more about that and deconstruct the chemist mindset versus that of the chess player as well. Next
Oh,
week.
these are so fun. These are all so fun. And again, if you haven't already, pop over to our website. If you'd like to take the free version of the assessment, go to MetaGagement.com, click on assessment, and you can jump straight in with the first question. Only takes a very few minutes to see what your primary persona is. And and if this is interesting for you, and if you would like to hear more, feel free to send us your questions, your comments, your suggestions right from the site. You can email us, or you can respond here on whatever platform you are watching or listening to today. And before we wrap up, I just want to take a moment again to thank you all for being here. You are the reason this show exists. We talk to HR people every day. We are constantly working to see how we can best support you as you support your company and your team, and as you make your work job more pleasant and less stressful. And we help you in many ways to go meta, including some of these tools and this assessment. We'll talk more about that next time. But if you would, please like and subscribe as well. Leave us a comment. We would love that. And Lyman, we have a new show time coming up. Let's see. Let me see. I believe that is Tuesdays now. Tuesday is our new show day. Then we're going to be airing at 8 a.m. Eastern. Sorry, can I rephrase that? I read 2 things at once. 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. GMT. So when it is 11 lunchtime Eastern, this will be airing on Tuesdays while you're on your commute in the morning in the Pacific time, and mid-afternoon for your tea and GMT. So check us out, and be sure to join us then, and shoot this link over to someone else who might really enjoy this. We can't wait to talk to you and hear more from you. Any final words, Dr. Lyman Montgomery?
This assessment is fun. We put a lot of time, effort into it. It's based on literally 20 years of research. And we just kept seeing these trends over and over again. And so go ahead, take the assessment, have fun with it. And tune in next week. We talk more about the other three persona types.
Absolutely. That's going to be so much fun. Thank you all for being with us here on MetaGagement-HR. I'm Ann Scottlin. This is Dr. Lyman Montgomery, and we'll see you next time.
Take care. Bye-bye.